welcome to Mayor Bowser's second term outlook. All right. Thank you. We're really excited to have you here tonight. My name is Jenny Reed, and I'm the Mayor's Director of Budget and Performance Management. And I'm joined by three esteemed panelists tonight to talk to you about investing in our priorities. So tonight we have Neil Albert, former city administrator and current director of the Downtown Bid. We have Mayor Williams, former two-term mayor of the District of Columbia and current director of the Federal City Council. And Jeffrey DeWitt, our current chief financial officer. So we want to talk a little bit about investing in our values. As each of you know, budgets are really where priorities are set, and we make investments that help shape our city now and into the future. So I want to talk with each of you about the key investments made during your tenure and how you think those investments helped lay the foundation for the city that we see today. So let me start with you, Mayor Williams. When you were mayor, you made major economic development and housing really key platforms of your time in office. How did you come to these priorities, and how do you think they shape the city today?
Well, one way of thinking about, first of all, I want to congratulate our mayor for entering the second term club, so give our mayor a big hand. I give you and the mayor and everybody my commendation for one, having priorities, because a lot of people in public office don't really think about prioritizing, but as importantly, really involving the community in setting those priorities. So I commend all of you for being here, and certainly everybody on the mayor's team. You all do a great job. So you're not often appreciated, so I want to thank you for the work that you do. So if you think that you're good yourselves, they can do a great job. So I want to think about the way I thought about the city was, I had been the CFO, I really thought about it from a financial point of view. When I came in as mayor, we weren't talking about fine-tuning or adjusting the air conditioning. You're talking about trying to get the car back on the road. So how do you really restore some of the basic revenue flows to the city? Sales tax, income tax, property tax, what are some of the investments we have to make to build that solid foundation? But if you think more broadly, and I don't want to sound like Obi-Wan Kenobi, but the way I thought about the city was, because we were broken, we were rebuilding our city. How do you restore the public realm? So, in Richard II, you had a private realm of the king. Here in our American democracy, how do you restore the public realm? The first order of business in the public realm is restoring public trust, stewardship, accountability, statehood, self-determination. All those are key to restoring the public realm. So that's paying your bills on time, building the public coffers, building our public finances, building public services, Mayor Fenty, rebuilding public education. All of those are building blocks to restoring a livable city. So then, if you set a goal of 100,000 people, you've got a chance of meeting that goal because you're putting in place those building blocks centered on public trust. Does that make sense?
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to ask you, Neil. So Mayor Williams mentioned during the Fenty administration, when you were city administrator, that there was a big investment in education, particularly in school facilities. What made you all focus on that, and what do you think are some of the impacts for the city today as a result?
So the mayor knocked, Mayor Fenty, that is, and I had the pleasure of working for Mayor Williams also, knocked on every door in D.C. when he was campaigning, and he heard loud and clear from the residents that we needed to do something about education in the city. So when he was elected, his single, I wouldn't say his singular focus, but one of the major focus areas was on education reform. And from the day he was elected in the primary, he started focusing on it. And so all of the transition actions and activities became focused on how do we create the best education system in Washington, D.C. And what that meant was doing things differently and shaking up the status quo. So we went from having a school board that was elected, and there's something to be said about elected school boards, to having an education system that was controlled by the executive. the mayor went out and hired, I think, the best and the brightest to run our education system, including our school's chancellor back in the day, Michelle Reed. Some of you may have heard about her. But in addition, the mayor focused every agency's attention on this primary goal. So whether it was developing the capital budget or selecting social services and other supports, the primary focus was on ensuring that we could make these 100,000 people that Mayor Williams was trying to bring into the city have wonderful experiences in our public school system.
You mentioned the capital budget, and I wanted to ask the CFO, since you've been our CFO, you've really, helped us focus on the infrastructure in the city and making really critical investments in roads and alleys and metro. Why do you think focusing on infrastructure is so important? And as you sort of look for the next 4 years, what is our financial outlook in terms of the ability to make new investments in this and other areas?
Well, it was probably about 5.5 years ago I first met the mayor. She was a council member at the time, and one of her questions to me was, we've got a $26 billion metro problem. If you come here, what are you going to do about it? And I almost said I just won't come here. But since then, it's been very impressive, the things that have gone on. We have now what's considered one of the best long-range capital financial planning processes in the world, and I do mean in the world. Australia, France, and other countries are actually coming to talk to us about it. And it goes back to what Mayor Williams says. It sets forward a process where you know what you have, you know the quality of it, you know what your priorities are, it goes back to the priority question, and you know how much money you have. So you do long-range financial planning, you know every asset you have, the quality of it, what it costs to defer it, and all these other things. And that's what was going on with Metro. Metro was being deferred, and it got to the point that something had to be done. And so with a tool like that, and with the mayor, she uses the tool, and not every administration would take something like that. You have all the information you need. And as you know, the capital program that the district has is priority-based. It's the most important thing to meet the priorities of schools, affordable housing, homelessness, and all those types of issues, which are the core of making the city a place where you want to live, work, and play, and be at all the time, which causes us to get to over 700,000 people, which caused us to have the reserves we have, which has resulted in us being able to fully fund our pensions and our retiree health care, and those types of things. So we're in some of the best financial condition, despite of what you're hearing on the news about the government shutdown. We are in some of the best financial condition of any large city in the United States, and we are now in the top, we're the 20th largest city in the United States. So the focus on, if you want to grow the city and you want to be financially healthy, you got to have good roads and streets, and a good metro system, and quality facilities for people to go to school, and quality buildings for government to work and provide services in, and good equipment like fire trucks and things like that. And we now know what we can afford and when we can afford it, and we can prioritize that to get it done as expeditiously as possible. And so that puts us in a situation of knowing how to fix all of our infrastructure by 2028, which no city in America can say. And you look at the budget that the mayor approved last year and that you submitted and the council approved last year. Roads and streets, the primary roads and streets are anticipated good repair by 2024. You can't find any other city in America that can say that. So we are in rarefied air in terms of what we're doing, and other cities across the world are looking at what we're doing, and it is about setting priorities, which is done very, very well by the mayor and yourself and all the people that participate in that, and we should all be very proud of that. But it's not without challenges, because we never have enough money because there are so many needs. There's so many things that need to get done, but it's about prioritizing, like everyone said.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is indicative is that from what you all have been saying, the city's really changed a lot in the time that you all have been here. And we've seen a lot of progress. Our population is growing. Our finances are very strong, some of the strongest in the nation. We just got our first AAA bond rating, which we're really excited about. Our school enrollment is up, unemployment is down, overall crime is down. So we have a lot of things to celebrate, but we know a lot of those successes come with challenges as well. There are people in the city who maybe aren't able to join in as much. And so a focus of the mayors over the last 4 years has really been about providing people a fair shot and really understanding how we can help everyone participate in the boom times that we're seeing. So from the investments you've seen over the last 4 years from the mayor or from areas that you think we need in the city, what are some of the most important areas to focus on investing in order to make sure that everyone has that fair shot? I'll sort of throw out one example that I think of from the first term, which is the investments the mayor has made in the Homeward DC plan to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. As a result of those investments, homelessness has decreased by 17% in the last 4 years. And so we've seen, really good changes as a result of that. So for your time here, what do you think are some important areas for us to keep investing in the future?
Sure. So I think that this administration, the mayor, has done a good job of balancing the investments. Speaking selfishly, I really appreciate the investments that the mayor is making in homeless services. On any given day in downtown DC, there's about 150 people experiencing homelessness on the streets. And I said this on a radio interview last week, this administration has invested more in homeless services than any other administration, but not at the detriment of other priorities in the District of Columbia. So there's been investments in the infrastructure of the city. We're still building bridges and building schools, but this administration, this mayor, is focused on the people who need the help the most, as evidenced by the investment in homeless services.
One of the mayor's priorities, and the one that a lot of money's been put into it, necessarily so, affordable housing. That is a continued challenge in the district to make sure that we can keep the characteristics and the quality of life in the district and making housing affordable. Having just bought a place not long ago, I can certainly relate to that. The other one, though, I will throw out is because we're in the 21st century and we want to attract the best and brightest of the district is technology. Making sure we have the things like, talk about my area, the OCFO, where you can do your taxes online. People demand a higher quality of service than they ever have before. So it's that investment in the technology resources to provide the services that our residents expect. And that's a hard one sometimes.
And Mayor Williams, at the Federal City Council, you all have had a big focus on education and workforce development. As you look back on the investments we made in the last 4 years, what do you think were some of the strongest investments, and what do you think about where we should be heading in the next 4 years?
I think one of the great things happened in DC is now over the last however many years it is since the control board period, things have accreted positively. So you've had people like Neil from one administration to another administration to another administration, some of the folks here, and I think that continuity of good government builds a strong platform so that when you have a mayor like our mayor now, well, she doesn't look at this strong platform and say, well, I'm just going to sit out on the platform on a chaise lounge. How do I use this platform and really propel forward for the city? I think what you all did with a home, and I say this when security allows me to be next to the mayor and I introduce her, I say, I think what you all did in the homeless initiative was huge. That's a huge deal to be able to close DC General and provide homes for people. Give yourselves a big hand. So now that things are moving positive, the mayor is moving the city forward, I think she has a very powerful bully pulpit. And one of the big things I would do as mayor is really lead the effort of this whole area, the DMV. How do we really capitalize now on Amazon coming across the river? Because if you talk to any urban planner, across the river is essentially here. So how do we really use that to our benefit in all the ways we're talking about? She has a platform, she has a capability. I think she can call that question.
So you all have been seeing the slides behind us as we've been talking, and I think that from the investments you see that we've made over the last 4 years, you can tell that when we talk about investing in our priorities, what the mayor is really focused on are equity, affordability, sustainability, inclusivity, and mobility across the city.
Today, we are proud to join the DC residents all over as we reflect on the last 4 years and hear about the priorities for the next 4 years. From the first woman to be re-elected as mayor of DC, Muriel Bowser.
As many of you know, we were finalists in a prestigious nationwide NASA high school competition. In fact, we were the only all-black women team in the competition. We developed a unique method to help purify lead and contaminated water after we noticed some of our school drinking fountains could not be used. During the online voting portion of the competition, we were confronted with racist attacks, focused on ensuring that we did not win. While we were all upset by the incident, we pressed on and eventually came in second place. We were comforted by the support of our families, friends, the faculty and staff at Banneker High School, and even Mayor Bowser, who awarded us a $4,000 grant to continue our work. Today, we are still thankful to Mayor Bowser, not just because of the $4,000 we received, but also because of her support of the diversity and inclusion of underrepresented communities in fields like STEM.
In fact, we developed our water filtration system at the Inclusive Innovation Incubator, also known as IN3, which Mayor Bowser opened in 2017. We are also thankful for her strong support of our school, Benjamin Banneker Academic High School. Where we have learned so much from our teachers and our peers, and are prepared to be leaders in our community, just like our mayor. As we ready to leave Banneker and continue to work toward our goals, becoming doctors and scientists, we will always remember Mayor Bowser's support and her focus on ensuring that DC is a diverse and inclusive city for everyone. Please join us in welcoming our mayor, Muriel Bowser.
Academic High School. I am just thrilled to see you all here, and I am thrilled to be here again, our 5th time at Gallaudet University here in Ward 5. Thank you, Gallaudet, for always hosting us. And we are continuing a tradition of looking back. We promised in 2015 that we would set bold goals and practical ones. And we would tell you every step of the way how we were doing. Some of those reports are monthly or quarterly or annually, but you could rest assured every January we would be here at Gallaudet to tell you exactly what we've been up to and exactly what we have to do still. It was my great honor to raise my hand again, following in the footsteps of Marion Barry and Tony Williams in becoming a 2-term mayor in Washington, D.C. And we were able to do that because of a very talented team of people who have worked with us over the last 4 years and a very committed Washington, D.C. The people of Washington, D.C. across all 8 wards embraced us, engaged us, challenged us, pushed us, and elected us again. And for that, we are very grateful. But I want to acknowledge just many of the very talented people that have helped us get this work done. You saw tonight leading our panels, moderating our panels, members of our 2nd term working group. Let me tell you a little bit about that. The first time I had the opportunity to be mayor, we had a transition committee. Many of you served on it, 300 people. 6 groups led by wonderful co-chairs who helped develop our policies for our first term. This go around, I said, we are going to look across the agencies of our government, some directors, some managers, some frontline workers, and ask them to help shape our 2nd term policies and framework. And I want to acknowledge them for the wonderful work that they have done. With members of the 2nd term working group, please stand. also want to acknowledge my wonderful senior team. We affectionately call them the Big Four in our administration. And let me introduce and thank them for their remarkable service. Rashad Young is the City Administrator for the District of Columbia. Rashad is, of course, responsible for the day-to-day operations, delivering services and delivering on all of the things that we promised the people of the District of Columbia. And I want to thank him for his day one service, 4 years and counting. Let me also acknowledge our senior advisor, Beverly Perry. Beverly Perry is here. Beverly provides strategic advice to the mayor and has stood up our federal and regional affairs office, our OPLA, and the Office of the Secretary for the District of Columbia. Let me also acknowledge the mayor's legal counsel, who is responsible for legal advice to the mayor and all executive agencies, Ronald Ross. Give Ronald a round of applause. And Ron became the MOLC, I guess, late in the mid last year, but in March. But Ron has been with us also since the beginning of our administration and now serves as the MOLC. And let me introduce John Falchicchio, the mayor's chief of staff. And John is responsible for helping me implement our big vision across all agencies of DC government and all of the things that we have promised you. You also see out in the communities my representatives, the wonderful deputy mayors of the District of Columbia, and I too want to acknowledge them for their wonderful leadership and work. Kevin Donahue is the deputy mayor for public safety and justice. Thank you, Kevin. And Kevin is also the deputy city administrator. Brian Kenner, who you saw earlier, is the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. And Paul Kahn, who's new to our team, is the Deputy Mayor for Education. And Wayne Turnage is the Interim Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services and the Director of Healthcare Finance. And Brenda Donald has been serving as the interim DMGO and also the director of family services. Other members of our executive team who, of course, provide financial and legal advice, CFO DeWitt and Attorney General Carl Rothstein. Give them all a big round. We have a lot of opportunities to talk about what's ahead. Today, I really want to spend tossing out some questions. In the budget engagement forums, I want to hear more from you. Before I move on, though, I want to acknowledge one of my best friends on the council, Anita Bonds, who is here. Give Anita, as our council member for housing, a big round of applause. So we know that in 4 years we have been able to accomplish much. And one very significant lesson that I learned was if you're going to get it accomplished in 4 years, in one term, you better start in the first year. And that's what we learned when we decided to close DC General and open short-term family housing. We started in 2015. That's what we learned when we made one of the biggest investments in Ward 8 to create an entertainment and sports arena and have it open at the end of our first term. We started in 2015. And that's what we know about our investments. We said that we were going to transform our small business investments and double the amount of those investments in a 4-year term. We started planning our Green Book in investments in 2015. So the reason why you're here today is to help us think about those things that we would have accomplished at the end of our 4 years and start them in 2019. Are you with me? So that is what we're here to discuss. So let's talk about transportation, for example. you know, I don't know where you live, but sometimes it takes me too long to get downtown. What about you? I don't know, but I know one thing, Dad, that this city is just getting bigger and bigger, right? 700,000 strong. People live, work, and dine and play in places that they never have. And so we have to be very focused on how we get around this city. So if we are to make significant changes in how fast we move, how much it costs, how safe it is, what are we willing to do to get there? Are we willing to prioritize some of our corridors just for public transit? All right. Does that mean we're going to take those cars off of 16th Street? All right, that's the question. Are we going to look to add bus routes in our city? Should we think about adding additional school transportation in our city? Is there something else that you want to do? More bike routes? Car-free days on different corridors? Because these are the questions. You see, Chuck, what we have to deal with? There is no low-hanging fruit. They're all tough questions. And some of them will involve trade-offs. You're going to have to give up something to get something else. Are you with me? What are we willing to do to close the achievement gap? What are we willing to do? Does that mean I have to invest more over here and less over here? Does that mean I have to push this faster and this pause for a little while? Does that mean that I have to reimagine vocational education in the District of Columbia? Does that mean that we have to challenge all of our business partners and council partners to reprioritize 2-year and 4-year education at the university level? Yes. So we have to do all of those things to get our kids, our students, our residents ready for the jobs of our future. Does that also mean that we have to make investments in companies to move here? Yes. Because we have to continue to create the jobs that provide incomes, that provide DC sustaining incomes. Are you with me? Yes. Now, are you willing to say that every person who's born here and raised here and chooses to live here should have a pathway to a middle income in Washington, D.C.? So that means focusing on how we do adult learning and connect our Department of Employment Services to our University of the District of Columbia and all the universities that serve our students. It also means making sure that we're looking at those early years from 0 to 5. That we're keeping families in the District of Columbia by making sure we have quality, affordable child care in every ward of the city. And that's what we intend to do. And part of the changes that we're making to our organization is aligning those lifelong learning goals and workforce goals in our education cluster. So with that, the WIC, our Workforce Investment Council, and the Department of Employment Services will now be in our education cluster, which we know is a good thing. Now, let's ask ourselves, what are we willing to do to cut gun deaths in half in the District of Columbia? Many of you have had the unfortunate experience of living in a neighborhood, of having a loved one involved in a violent crime. I get, unfortunately, devastating communication anytime someone is killed in the District of Columbia. So we know that as a city, we won't tolerate violence escalating in our city. We also recognize that it is an approach that requires police involvement, human services involvement, and community involvement. And we are very focused on doing what we need to do to get there. The chief already talked to you about how important it is to make sure that we have a police force that is resourced, that is trained, and reflects the values of Washington, D.C. And we have been very focused on recruiting D.C. residents. And we will get to 4,000 in the next 4 years. And the chief is also committed to make sure that those additional officers are not closed up in their cars, but on foot, on bike, on segways, all across the District of Columbia. We also have some tough questions to ask ourselves about building more affordable housing. There is not a single bigger issue in the District of Columbia. But we also have to be willing to think bigger. And we have to challenge, not just us in the room, but we have to challenge all policymakers who will weigh in on these ideas. How can we get more units? How can we, in some cases, where it makes sense, make our buildings taller or more dense? How can we make sure that we are making it easier for the development community to get permits when it comes to affordable housing? Just as easy or even faster as with luxury housing. How can we make sure that our tax codes make sense and don't penalize the construction of affordable housing, but incentive? These are the types of questions that we have to ask ourselves. And just like we learned with constructing all across the city short-term family housing facilities, that the affordable housing problem is not just a Ward 8 problem, or Ward 7 problem, or Ward 6 problem. It's an all 8 wards problem. And so all 8 wards have to be a part of the solution. So I charge our team with looking across the city and setting goals for each part of the city to reach, so that we can reach our goals by 2025. I've also charged our team with making sure that we're looking every single day at how DC government can be more seamless, easier, more personalized, and deliver services for our residents in more efficient ways. But I gotta tell you, on the heels of a 10-inch snowstorm, I'm pretty proud how DC government is operating. Let's give them a big round of applause. So one way that we're going to improve service delivery, and we're very focused on wards 7 and 8. I feel like we have a unique opportunity in our city right now to do the most for communities that have had the least investment in the history of the District of Columbia, and we intend to do it. I am going to transform our Deputy Mayor's Office for greater economic opportunity, and I'm going to widen its focus. It had been focused on DOES and DSLBD, which are very important, but also citywide responsibilities. And I want to focus them completely on Ward 7 and Ward 8. We're going to create a new office, the Office of the East of the River Services. And this office, under the direction of the city administrator, will be responsible for marshaling the resources of our entire government for people who live in Ward 7 and Ward 8. And I'm also pleased to announce that the new executive director for the office is Tim White. Tim is currently serving as the Chief of Staff at the Department of Employment Services, and prior to that, he had been serving agency coordination in DMPED and Brian in the Deputy Mayor's Office for Planning and Economic Development. He's a resident of Ward 8, and he is looking forward to getting started on Monday, I guess, on Monday. And I'm also very pleased to highlight a few other of our team members who have worked hard from day one in our administration and are taking on new responsibilities. And Lindsay Parker is another person. American Chief Technology Officer. You also heard from Andrew Trueblood, and Andrew Trueblood will be the first millennial to direct the DC Office on Planning. And another person who's come up in our administration is taking on a new role, and I'm pleased to announce the appointment of Delano Hunter as the Director of the DC Department of Parks and Recreation. And I'm looking forward not just to working with these directors in their new roles, but with just an incredibly talented cabinet. We have a lot of big agencies in DC government. You probably don't realize that there are about 70 people that run an agency of various sizes. I don't get to see them enough or spend enough time with them, but I get to see their work every single day, and you do too. So I hope you will join me in showing appreciation for all of the members of the Bowser Cabinet. So I just want to say a couple of more things about new initiatives. I see Tommy Wells here, who has been an incredible leader of our Department of Energy and the Environment, who has helped DC become the first LEED Platinum city in the world, which is a great honor, but also a great responsibility to keep innovating and to keep leading the world. And this week, with members of the council, I will sign into law one of the most forward-thinking pieces of environmental legislation in the nation. It will allow us to get one of our signature green initiatives, the Green Bank, off the ground, and moves us closer to reaching our sustainability goals. And it's also very important for us to keep our eye on this important transportation infrastructure and sustainability work. And for this reason, we will be creating a new cluster of work of agencies in our government that will work as a team on transportation, environment, and the operations of our city. So we will tell you more about a new deputy mayor for transportation and infrastructure. So I'm excited about that. And finally, I want to mention another very important piece of work. Many of you participated, many more than we actually thought, participated in our first ever Infant and Maternal Health Summit back in the fall, so that we could focus on women's health. We, of course, have a focus on making DC healthy across all categories, and we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of tools to get there, including having 97% of our people insured, including improving our fire and emergency response to incidents. But we know when it comes to chronic illness, we have a lot of work to do. And we also have a work focusing on healthy moms and babies. And for that reason, we will create a Thrive by 5 coordinating council. And part of their work will be infant and maternal health. But they will also focus on what we need to have thriving babies and families and kids ready to learn at the age of 5. So stay tuned for our work on Thrive by 5. So I continue to thank you for your support. I invite you to look in the next 3 months about all the opportunities to engage, including our open house that will be at February 5th at the Wilson Building. Each of the clusters that I have mentioned, our deputy mayors and agency directors will all be there at their offices to meet you, to talk to you, to hear from you, and you can hear their initiatives as well. This February, we also start the important work of our budget engagement. This budget, remember I said the things that we get done in this term start this year. So this budget will really lay the groundwork for what we are able to get accomplished in the next 4 years. So I hope that you will participate in budget engagement. And then, before I present the budget to the council, I'll have the opportunity to let you know about the state of the District of Columbia, where we'll lay out our priorities for this year, the term, and for the future of the District of Columbia. God bless you all.